The evening sky glowed orange as Clara sat quietly on a worn wooden bench, her baby girl, Emily, wrapped tightly in her arms. The city moved around her, people laughing, cars passing, lights turning on one by one. But to her, it all felt distant, almost like another world she no longer belonged to. Emily stirred softly, her tiny fingers curling against Clara's chest. Clara smiled faintly, though her heart felt heavy. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing the baby's hair away from her face. "Mommy's here." Her voice broke just a little. She looked down at her small bag resting beside the bench. A few diapers, a bottle, and a faded blanket. That was all she had left. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back the tears that burned behind them. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry again today. A gentle breeze passed, carrying the laughter of children playing somewhere nearby. It made her think of what life used to be, of mornings filled with music and warm smiles. Now it felt like that world had disappeared overnight. Still, she sat upright, her arms wrapped protectively around Emily, as if love alone could shield her from everything. People walked by, some glancing for a moment, then turning away. No one stopped. No one asked. And Clara didn't expect them to. But just as she began humming softly to keep her baby calm, she felt someone watching her from a short distance away. A man standing near the park's gate, hesitating, as if unsure whether to come closer. Something about his eyes held both concern and something else. Something that felt like fate quietly waiting to unfold. The man stood for a long moment, unsure what had drawn him there. His name was Daniel, a quiet man who often kept to himself, spending his evenings walking after work to clear his mind. But tonight felt different. There was something about the sight of that young woman sitting so still, her baby pressed tightly against her, that stirred something deep inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. He noticed the way she brushed her fingers through the child's hair, how she tried to smile, even though her eyes told another story. Daniel hesitated, his heart thudding. He didn't want to intrude, yet something told him walking away would be the wrong choice. He took a cautious step forward, then another, until his shoes crunched softly on the gravel path. Clara looked up, startled, her eyes widening in surprise. For a brief second she seemed ready to run, but Daniel raised his hands gently. "I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice calm and careful. "I didn't mean to frighten you, I just noticed you might need help." Clara blinked, unsure how to respond. Kindness had become rare to her lately, and trust felt like something she couldn't afford. "We're fine," she murmured, her gaze dropping back to her baby. Daniel nodded, but he didn't walk away. Something about her tone, the quiet sadness beneath her words, made him stay. He glanced at the small bag beside her, then at the fading light in the park. "It's getting cold," he said quietly. "Would you like a warm drink? There's a cafe nearby." Clara looked up again, torn between caution and exhaustion. For the first time that day, she didn't say no. Something in his eyes, steady, kind, without judgment, made her believe that maybe, just maybe, this stranger's offer wasn't out of pity, but simple human care. Clara followed Daniel through the park's narrow path, her steps slow and uncertain. Emily slept peacefully in her arms, her small face pressed against her mother's shoulder. The night had begun to settle in, and the streetlights flickered to life one by one, painting soft pools of light on the ground. Clara's heart raced, not because she was afraid of Daniel, but because she hadn't accepted help from anyone in a long time. It felt strange, almost unreal, to have someone notice her, to speak kindly without asking anything in return. Daniel kept a respectful distance, glancing back now and then to make sure she was still there. "It's just around the corner," he said, his voice gentle. "They make the best tea in the city." Clara nodded faintly, her voice too heavy with emotions to reply. Inside the small cafe, the warmth hit her like a wave. The scent of coffee and baked bread filled the air, and for a moment, Clara forgot everything else. Daniel guided her to a quiet table in the corner. "You can sit," he said, smiling. "I'll get something warm for both of you." She sat down carefully, her body trembling slightly from exhaustion and relief. Emily stirred in her arms, opening her tiny eyes to the new lights around her. Clara smiled down at her baby, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe for now." When Daniel returned with 2 cups, he didn't ask questions. He simply placed one in front of her and said, "You don't have to say anything. Just rest." For a moment, Clara stared at him, unable to understand why this man, a complete stranger, cared at all. But when he smiled, something inside her cracked open. The wall she had built began to crumble. She didn't know where this night would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, and that feeling alone was enough to bring silent tears to her eyes. The cafe had grown quieter as the evening deepened. Soft music played in the background, and rain began tapping lightly against the windows, turning the outside world into a blur of silver light. Clara sat still, her hands wrapped around the warm cup Daniel had placed in front of her. Steam curled gently upward, carrying with it the scent of comfort she hadn't felt in months. Daniel sat across from her, his eyes calm and kind, waiting patiently. He didn't push her to talk, yet his silence spoke volumes. It told her he was there, not out of curiosity, but because he cared. That alone felt almost unbelievable. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "You didn't have to stop," she said, tracing the edge of her cup with her finger. "Most people just walk by," Daniel smiled faintly. "Most people don't know what it's like to feel invisible," he replied. The words made her look up. Something in his tone, the quiet ache beneath it, made her realize he wasn't just saying it. He understood. "You've been through something too," she said softly. He nodded, eyes flickering with a distant sadness. "A long time ago," he said. "But I learned something. Sometimes helping someone else heal helps you heal too." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the space between them, gentle and steady. Emily giggled in her sleep, breaking the silence, and both of them smiled. Clara looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw not just a stranger but someone carrying his own scars, just like her. In that shared quietness, something began to change. The heaviness inside her heart started to lift, just a little. She didn't know why she trusted him, but she did. Maybe it was because he didn't look at her with pity. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming softly on the cafe windows like a steady heartbeat. Hours had passed without either of them noticing. Clara felt a strange calmness settling over her, the kind that comes after a storm, quiet but fragile. Emily now slept peacefully in a small blanket Daniel had found in his car, and for the first time in many nights, Clara's shoulders weren't shaking from cold or fear. She looked across the table at Daniel, who was quietly stirring his coffee, lost in thought. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up surprised, then smiled. "Because someone once showed me kindness when I needed it most," he said simply. And it changed everything. His words stayed in her heart. Clara had heard empty promises before, but there was something steady in Daniel's voice, something real. As they sat there, she began telling him small pieces of her story, how life had once been bright and full, how unexpected loss had turned everything upside down, and how every door she knocked on seemed to close before she could step inside. Daniel listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, he nodded slowly and said, "You've carried too much alone. Let someone help you carry it now." The sincerity in his tone almost broke her. She wanted to refuse, to say she didn't need help, but deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Outside, the rain began to slow, and the faint glow of streetlights shimmered through the mist. Daniel stood and said softly, "Come with me. I know a place where you and your little one can rest." Clara hesitated, clutching Emily closer. Trust was hard, but something in his gentle expression made her believe that maybe this time she could take a step toward hope instead of fear. Clara followed Daniel out into the cool night, her baby resting quietly against her shoulder. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining beneath the streetlights. The air smelled fresh, almost like a new beginning. Daniel walked ahead, keeping a respectful distance, glancing back now and then to make sure she was close. Clara's heart raced with every step, not from fear this time, but from something unfamiliar, a fragile sense of safety. They reached a small brick house tucked behind a line of tall trees. It wasn't big, but warm light glowed through the windows, and flower pots hung neatly along the porch. Daniel paused at the gate and turned to her. "This was my mother's place," he said softly. "I keep it for moments like this, for people who need a second chance." Clara froze. The words felt almost unreal. She looked at the little home, the soft glow spilling through the curtains, the quiet peace surrounding it. "You don't even know me," she whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe not yet. But I can see the strength it took for you to get this far. That's enough for me." She wanted to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. He opened the door, and warm air wrapped around her like a gentle hug. Inside, the room was cozy, a couch, a small table, and a soft crib near the wall. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Emily stirred, blinking at the light, then smiled in her sleep. For the first time in months, Clara exhaled without pain. She laid Emily down gently and turned to Daniel. "Thank you," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise you'll keep believing that good still exists." Clara nodded, her heart trembling. As Daniel stepped back toward the door, she realized this moment, this simple act of kindness, had changed everything. Sometimes, she thought, miracles don't arrive with noise or light. Sometimes they walk quietly beside you, wearing an ordinary smile, and offer you a reason to start again.